This episode of the Hey Chaplain podcast with Major Joe Grasela was recorded before a live studio audience. No, seriously, it really was.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm Joe Grasela, and this is the Hey Chaplain podcast. Jared and I are going to talk about all the wonderful things that he covered this year on the show, and maybe give you a sneak peek of what's coming in 2026. Hey, Chaplain, you got a sec?
Sure. Anything for you, Major?
All right, come on in, have a seat. Let's go over your year, and let's talk about your evaluation.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
It's time.
So tell me, across the last year, across 2025, did you have any episodes I did that you particularly liked or resonated with you? What did you think?
I think the better question would be, are there any I didn't like? Because that would be a more manageable number. No, I think it was a great year. I think you had a lot of really good, interesting topics and guests that you brought onto the show. I know a lot of the subject matter and topics that you discussed, I think, are very relevant and pertinent to law enforcement as well as supporting those in law enforcement, which I think is one of the big purposes of your show. So I think you really met that. And I think that even with some of the topics being sort of maybe a sad nature or somber, were so vital and important for what you want to put out there and to support those, especially with things like line of duty deaths or dealing with substance abuse or other issues that, we deal with in this career profession.
There was more of that this year. I noticed just selecting music that I went through just last night. I went through all my catalog. Here's my folder of music, and a lot of it is very sad music because it was appropriate to the episodes that I did. And I have some happier stuff here and there, but yeah, there was some sadder topics. It was a sadder year.
For the purpose of the show, I think discussing those hard topics, something that I think you never shy away from, and providing that experience that your guests have brought and just your personal experience, I think is so important. So I just wanted to start off and say thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying it. Were there any episodes that really stood out to you?
I think you know that I'm a huge history nut and love hearing tales of policing from bygone ages, even recent history. Speaking with Dana Gouge from, Wichita and talking about the BTK serial killer and working that case and catching him was top tier. Like, I love that. Hearing about him and the investigation and kind of playing to BTK's ego and then how they were able to figure out where he was and, all these different, facets of that investigation and then to actually be there to arrest him, I thought was just incredible. I loved every minute of those episodes.
I am so grateful to Dana Gouge for approaching me. I mean, he asked, would you like to interview the cop that handcuffed the BTK serial killer? I'm like, sure. He goes, well, that's me.
Let me have a seat.
And so that was fantastic of him. And I actually had a good connection to the family of a BTK victim.
Oh my.
And so I was going to interview a family member like 2 or 3 years ago, and it just never quite worked out. And I'm so glad that I held off and got an arresting officer. That was so much better because then we had an insight into the investigation, and it was made for a much better episode. So, thank the Lord for unanswered prayers, and unfinished episodes, because this turned out to be a better one.
And Wichita's not far from us.
It's 3 hours down the road.
A few hour drive, and you're there, and the entire BTK serial killer, how that unfolded with his victims and everything else, and the amount of time that the crimes were taking place,
uncaught. Yes.
That caught that entire region. I mean, people were afraid, and for them to figure that out and finally bring him to justice was so important. And then just not only on a regional or local level for us here in Kansas and the Midwest, but that was something that people would know nationwide and worldwide. So to have him on, and then have him be able to come in and talk about his firsthand experience and being able to do that, I thought was just fascinating. And
a little follow-up, too. I mentioned in those episodes that he was coming on as a chaplain with our department here in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And today, the day that we're recording this, he gave the invocation at a promotion ceremony.
Yeah, I got to see that, yeah.
And so that went really well. Just glad to see him in a new chapter of his life, and it was great. Here he was, former homicide detective, and now he's a chaplain praying at a promotion for a detective. I just thought that was great.
Well, and, just to brag about him a little bit more, I've had the opportunity over the last year to work in our detective bureau, and I know he's really striving to be a chaplain supporting detectives, much like you've been really focused on supporting patrol officers. And to have somebody that's got that experience of being an investigator to then come in and know the stressors and the things that affect our detectives as they work.
He's present and he's around the detectives.
For sure.
And that will pay off. He's investing by building rapport and being present. I just couldn't be happier with the work that he's doing as a chaplain.
And not even to think of him as a chaplain, but just as a human being, he's a fantastic guy. Like getting to talk to him, he's easy to talk to. He's just a wonderful person. I'm thankful that we've got him on our agency now.
Yeah. Another great person, Tim Eggebraaten.
Oh, yeah.
I've had him on the show multiple times, and this year he came on and did an episode about imposter syndrome. Here he was, a successful law enforcement career, ended up a police chief, and talking about imposter syndrome. I got so many people that reached out to me in person, by email, at a convention, and they said, Tim Eggebraaten spoke to me. This was, I had so much of my career that I was on the outside, I was big and tough, and on the inside, I was terrified because I'm like, how is it that I'm in charge of this?
Oh, I deal with that daily. And listening to that episode, I constantly have the thought of that imposter syndrome. Why am I here? I'm not good enough for this. I don't have the skill set. It's some people say you got to fake it till you make it or whatever. And that's just day-to-day life with me. I'm going through this and learning. And
you're one of our young majors. You are not as old and wizened as you sound.
I don't know. It's one of those things where you get into sort of a decent-sized agency where we have a fair amount of crime, and you see things pretty quickly. And I think our officers, not to take anything away from an officer or deputy or anybody in law enforcement anywhere else, but you come to our place and you get on and you see some things very quickly and you get kind of seasoned.
Yeah.
And I have officers that have worked for me that have got less than 5 years on, that have probably got some experiences that guys and gals have worked entire careers and not experienced. But even as you advance in a career or have different jobs or different responsibilities, there's always, at least for me, there's that nagging thought in the back of your mind that's saying, are you good enough to do this? And are you capable of it? And you have to try and fight that and overcome it. And just him even mentioning that is, it's nice to hear it from somebody like that you have so much respect for and, has so much experience, because you have to have some semblance or sense of humility to even want to talk about that.
Yeah. I think that's what touched people, was his transparency. He's a police chief who's retired. He can ride off into the sunset. But instead, he comes back and he will directly address his own shortcomings, his own fears, in a way that other officers can relate to. I mean, that dovetails perfectly with what I'm trying to do with this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's just perfect for that. And he does such a nice job.
Oh, he's got a great voice.
Communicator.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's eloquent. He's somebody that you want to listen to, and anytime we get to hear him on the show, it's something I look forward to. So I just want to say thanks to Tim for that. One, I was glad I got to have a small piece of. Got to hook you up with Todd Hixson, who had a long and interesting career with DEA and serving our nation in a law enforcement capacity, even in other countries. So getting to hear him and actually getting to maybe putting you with somebody that you can maybe be a guest on the show and then having it actually happen. It was like, I got to be a proud dad.
Worked wonderful. It was a fantastic lead. The different agencies that he has worked for and continues to work for, the different jobs he has that are law enforcement related. I mean, he was just a wealth of information. And so that was really good. And one of the things I like to do on this show is introduce cops to other fields and other agencies. One of the things I was struck by as a young chaplain coming in, I'd ask a cop a question about, well, what does the guy down the hall do? And many times, like, I don't know. I've never had that job. I have no idea what he does over there.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, I just assumed everybody would be a subject matter on all things law enforcement. And truth is, maybe in a small agency you have that, but in a larger agency, people specialize. And so there are really unique specialized roles out there.
Oh, for sure.
Todd Hixson was a great example of somebody who had done some really interesting things internationally and locally that a lot of people have never heard of.
Right. And Todd is one of those guys that is very knowledgeable on subjects, especially things that he's done. To listen to him talk about his career, going from being a local police officer in Texas to then working in, DEA, and then, like we said, going to other places, including like Canada. I just thought that was something really cool that I think a lot of people, when they go into a career in law enforcement, or maybe they have desire to go into a career in law enforcement, they're not even aware of opportunities like that. And to get to hear about that,
yes,
I can go be a federal law enforcement officer, go to another country and work and do that, I think is just neat to get to hear that on the show.
Get to travel. He had great insight about how that affects the family and that kind of stuff. It's just a lot of good content there. It is funny, though. He had a Canadian connection. He had worked in Canada. And I went into 2025 thinking, okay, I've got a contact for Brazil. I have a contact for Mexico. I'm going to have some south of the border episodes. None of those happened. But I kept coming back to Canada. Canada pops up repeatedly in 2025 with a couple great guests, including Hixson's experience.
You also had a guest that had law enforcement experience and chaplain experience working in Canada, both with local agencies as well as the RCMP.
Yes.
So having that on the show, I thought was really cool. Canada is an important neighbor to our north. They've been our allies through many years. We kind of forgive them for the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, but all the other wars that we've been involved in, they've been great partners and supported us. And getting to hear a little bit about their perspective, in Canada was kind of cool too.
Yeah, you would not believe how many takes it requires to say Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Tongue twister.
I stumbled on that
Say
so
that
many
10 times fast.
Yeah.
Goodness. No, but, if we want to talk about, traditions and history and uniforms, RCMP have some of the coolest, most iconic, gorgeous uniforms with that, red jacket. They have the hat. They wear like the Sam Brown belts. And just their lineage and history being, Royal Canadian Mounted Police is just fascinating. But, one thing I learned this summer, I had an opportunity to go to the Police Executive Research Forum's Senior Management and Policing course in Boston, Massachusetts. And we actually had a supervisor, a leader from the, Vancouver Police Service there. And just hearing about the issues that they have in Canada in different places, and then also some of their laws, and how those things can be very different, in some ways almost indistinguishable between us and the United States. But then in some ways they can be very, very different, and getting to hear about some of those problems that they have in different parts of Canada, just fascinating. Like I said, it's cool to learn about other parts of the world, especially our neighbors.
Well, Rick James is in the Vancouver area, and I've already made arrangements to visit him when I go to Vancouver here in about a year and a half.
Okay.
I'm going to do everything possible.
I'll try to link you up with my buddy, and he might get another perspective. Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
I know one thing we always like to talk about in these, end of year evaluation episodes are kind of talking about maybe the top 10 countries, top 10 cities for, listenership. Do you want to see where are we at this year? Who's leading the pack?
Top 10 countries. The United States, of course, is in number one. That's almost 90% of my downloads is in the United States. All 50 states, but that's the vast majority. Followed that with Canada, the United Kingdom, Singapore is now fourth. Number 5 would be Australia, then Germany, Ireland, South Africa, Hong Kong, and Japan.
Okay.
The top 10. Mexico and New Zealand just barely missed the top 10. And most of those, I do have Singapore's the one where I don't know if that's a favorite of VPNs where people are spoofing their location, or if I actually have a lot of listeners in Singapore. It's possible.
It's possible.
But Singapore's one of the only places I've not ever gotten an email from someone from Singapore. And all the other countries I have. And so
that's it. If you're from Singapore and you listen to the show, send them an email.
Out. Tell me you're actually in Singapore and listening to Hey Chaplain. Please let me know. And then the top 10 cities outside of the KC Metro would be St. Louis, Missouri at number 1 now. Chicago, Illinois, Dallas, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Charlotte, North Carolina. Number 6 is Phoenix, Arizona. Number 7, Singapore. Number 8, Los Angeles, California. Number 9 is Indianapolis, Indiana, and rounding out the top 10 would be Houston, Texas.
So Texas is a pretty big state for you then.
It really is. Yeah, I got a lot of listeners in Texas, and really, I kind of feel West Coast and the South is where I hear most of the feedback from. Most of my emails seem to be either California or Tennessee or Texas or something like that. That seems to be the case. But I have such a growing number of listeners in Chicago and St. Louis. The show's really taken off in those two cities.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to call it a market, but there's a lot of people in those places and there's a lot of law enforcement. So
yeah. A lot of big agencies, a lot of chaplain programs, because most of these people are cops, but so a lot of chaplains are listening, and just a lot of other civilians are listening in.
For sure. That's awesome. One thing that I really enjoyed too this year is always kind of like your little bonus episodes, and your kind of bonus episode around Halloween with Jim Dudley talking about stuff in San Francisco. I love it. I've said it on the show before. I think the Bay Area is fascinating. My parents actually got married south of San Francisco in Monterey. Been to San Francisco. It's a gorgeous city. And getting to hear, Jim Dudley, talk about almost shooting a guy running down the street with a chainsaw. Like I was cackling with laughter as he was telling that story. So that was a fun one. I really like that.
Well, I want to thank Jim. Jim is a fellow podcaster and has become a good friend too. And he is so helpful because I had a different Halloween episode planned. And I won't go into it because I may still get to use it for next year. But I had to change course very last second. And so I reached out to a few people. I had a contact in New Orleans. I thought, there'll be some good stories
Crescent City,
in New Orleans.
A lot of spooky stuff down there.
Couldn't make that happen in time. And I'm like, there's a time crunch. I've got lots of great leads. And Jim said, well, I can help you. And he didn't think he had any spooky stories. He just knew he had good Halloween stories. And he had good Halloween stories and a spooky story, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I loved it. The drink on the bar, and that was great. It was good. I love that episode. It was fun. And I've always enjoyed your kind of like bonus themed episodes. Whether it's related to Christmas or Halloween, whatever. But I always get a kick out of those.
I believe 2025 was the first year that I had an episode every single Monday. Because technically, if you notice, the numbered episodes only come out on the first, third, and fifth Mondays. And the second and fourth Mondays are either nothing's published, or it's a bonus episode or a part 2 episode.
Gotcha.
Well, now I'm doing quarterly updates. I'm doing, all sorts of extra bonus material. And a lot of my episodes had part 2 episodes. So I believe I actually have to look at 2024 to make sure. But I picked up the pace at 24. And then in 2025, every single week had an episode. And so didn't intend to do that, but it's getting easier for me to publish. And I have so many people that I can reach out to and create content with. And so it's just become something I've just kind of worked into this flow, and I try to work way ahead, and that helps. And so,
it gives you room to get things corrected, or maybe have somebody jump in and be a filler if you need it last minute.
Yeah. Typically the last minute stuff is only when I have a gap, because I'll record maybe 2 months, maybe even 3 months in advance. And occasionally as I'm rearranging the schedule, figure out like what flows from one week to the next, or if I'm hitting one topic too much, can I put something in that's kind of a palate cleanser? When I'm doing that, sometimes I'm like, I don't have anything for next week. Gotcha. And that's where I was with Halloween.
And he slid in and took care of it for you.
Absolutely.
One thing, just to, you kind of mentioned that with the production, pre-production, actually recording episodes. You got the post-production, all the logistical aspects of, hey, when can I talk to you? When can we schedule this? Making our schedules line up, getting the interview done. And then you've got that post-production piece, right? You don't just record it and throw it on the air.
No, I do not. I edit.
with the editing and working through those episodes after you record them, is it getting easier, or is it just the same amount of time as when you started? Have you noticed a difference in that?
It ebbs and flows, because once you start in on it, it's overwhelming. And it's like there's so much to do, and you're never reaching perfection. You have the law of diminishing returns, where you get to 98, 99% about where you want it, and then you can spend 6 more hours closing that gap, and you may never quite close it.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right,
yeah.
Right. And if you get it to 100%, it sounds sterile and artificial.
Oh.
And so that becomes a problem. So then you're like, okay, how do I put enough time in to make it like a
professional,
so it's professional and it's at high quality. I'm setting an expectation for what you get when you listen to this show, but I'm not spending too many hours and it doesn't become too overwrought.
Okay.
And that's a artistic thing. And so I will leave in an occasional and mistakes and deliberately add outtakes to the end of some episodes just to say, hey, these are still humans and we're still talking on, in a
sure.
real way. It's not artificial and clinical.
Yeah, no, I think that's one aspect of your show that I like is you do. I think we've talked about this before, maybe on air or not, but there's some shows out there that are really very. It just seemed like they put together really quickly. There's audio
sloppy.
issues. Yeah, sloppy is a good way. Sloppy.
Yeah.
There's audio spikes. There's sometimes the volume's off between one person or the other. It changes.
It's not leveled.
And if you're listening to it with headphones or earpods or something, it blows your ears out. But
I hate that.
Your show is rock solid consistent. If I'm in the car or on a walk or something, I'm listening to your show and I pop it on, I know I'm going to have exceptional music. Everything's going to sound great. Things are going to be.
It's going to be the right loudness.
You got it.
Everyone's going to be equalized and leveled, and so I'm not going to be 10 times louder than you are, or vice versa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's nice that I just want to say on behalf of since I'm a listener on behalf of us, I just want to thank you for the time it takes to put in that effort to make sure your show does have that really nice polish because when I'm listening to these shows and I'm listening to your show a lot, it's appreciated. It's nice.
Well, I'm eager to learn and I'm eager to bring in help too. I did an episode this year with the bagpipes where I talked to Jim Higgins about the work he does playing bagpipes at funerals. But then I had him come back and I actually brought a volunteer sound engineer and we went into a different part of the building and set up special microphones to record, and which was incredibly complicated and frankly outside of my skill set. But I knew a guy who felt like he could tackle this.
Nice.
And we recorded a handful of bagpipe tunes so I could create this special episode of okay, we're listening to bagpipe tunes. Here's kind of your quick guide. And then we were able to really capture the different parts of the bagpipe because you have the pipe itself and then you have the drones that are playing. And it's such a loud, overpowering instrument. My microphones that I used to record the show
get blown out.
The wrong type of microphones. Yeah. And so by recording these bagpipes in the way that we did in a much larger room with microphones 50 feet away and another one on a boom arm right above the drones, and another one in front of the bagpiper, the mix then we could take in post-production and the actual final cut sounds wonderful. Now that then gets condensed into an MP3 to be loaded up for people to hear out in the world, which is a shame because a lot of that work then got lost by condensing it down into a internet file. But it was a great experience for me.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is we need to start getting you into recording bands and other musicians, and you're a full-on audio engineer now. Got it.
No, if I'd afraid my friend, I'd have to pay him if I brought him back a second time.
We're gonna have
a lot of work for me.
We're gonna have all the intros and outros done by the Hey Chaplain 5 now with little jazz quintet. You'll be able to record.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's no, it is interesting. Like one thing that I would have never thought about until you mentioned it is just I don't have the right microphones for that kind of recording, or I need to make sure that we're in the right setting, or I need to do these different things to be able to get different levels that we can then optimize, or the proper terminology for mixing so that it comes out and sounds good. And it's a fascinating thing. And
you don't have to.
It's cool you got that experience.
I don't want to discourage someone from starting a podcast because you really don't need any of that equipment. You can grab your phone, record your voice, throw it up on a free platform like YouTube, and boom, you're a podcaster. It's hard to do it well, and it's even harder to keep doing it. And so please don't let me discourage you from trying. Once you get into it, you may say, hey, okay, I'll tackle that learning curve and become better at this as a craft, as an art. And that would be great. But I'm a little worried that painting a picture like what I just did might be like too discouraging. People are like, oh, I don't even want to try. No, there is more room for more podcasts out there. That this is an area where there's plenty of space for more people to get involved.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. No, it's like I said, I really enjoyed that episode, and it's one of those things that I didn't expect. And then when you get it, you're like, oh, this is cool. This is a neat opportunity. The show publishes things that sometimes you don't even think are going to come, and they come out. This year, unfortunately, had to cover some kind of sad and somber topics that, we kind of discussed earlier, very important to this career, and especially for chaplains and people in any type of law enforcement organization. How was that for you? I know you don't shy away from tough topics and subject matter that may be a little bit harder to get it to convey in an audio format. What was that like for you recording episodes about losing an officer and going through the process of rendering the proper honors for that officer after they die?
Yeah, a podcast is often akin to a TED Talk. And it's like, hey, welcome to my TED Talk. I've got something I want to get on my soapbox and talk about. And this show has some of that. But this year, instead of welcome to my TED Talk, it became welcome to my counseling session. Because as I was going through my calendar of, who I'm going to have on the show and stuff that I'd planned for some of them for more than a year to have on the show, I also was working through losing these officers. Deputy Ming, I did not know personally, but my officers knew him. I had officers I'm close to that were close to him. And so that was difficult in a different sense. Then a month later, where Officer Simoncic was killed, and I knew him personally. And in fact, I'm still working through in my brain that I know someone, I was close to someone who was murdered. Mm-hmm. And I don't naturally put myself in that category. If you ask a crowd of people, raise your hand if you have a friend or somebody in your life that was murdered, I wouldn't think to raise my hand. And yet I did go through that. Mm-hmm. And so part of the show was working through those things and a desire to help other people work through it themselves. And so I did a very rare solo episode where I talked about grief, and I didn't interview anybody. I just like, here are my thoughts on grief. Mm-hmm. And I needed to do that because that's what I was working through.
Right.
And then I also scheduled to interview a few of our captains and talk about the work of putting together a law enforcement funeral for a line of duty death.
Yeah, those were tough episodes for me to listen to. I worked with Captain Davis and Captain Dorsett in that process. Like I said, I worked in our investigative bureau and worked the crime scenes, multiple crime scenes when both the deputy and the officer were killed, and then was part of the process of coordinating and then actually facilitating those line of duty death funerals. And I thought they both did an outstanding job. Both Gregg and Shenee did a really good job of throwing out a bunch of names. They mentioned all the other agencies. Like you mentioned, there were people that came in from all over the country. We had all of our local agencies here in Kansas and the Kansas City metropolitan area that supported us in any way that we asked. I think you and I have talked about this before, where you said, funerals aren't necessarily, for the person that they are. I mean, they're for the person that died, but it's a lot of it is there for the people, for the living, to be able to process that grief, have some closure of some sort, and give them a way to put into feelings and words and thoughts, honoring that person and kind of that experience they had and those ties that they had to that person. So I thought they were both for Deputy Ming and Officer Simoncic. I thought everybody came together and did an outstanding job, and I'm glad that you were able to bring them, Captain Davis, Captain Dorsett, on to talk about that in detail, because it's, once again, not the most pleasant subject matter. Unfortunately, in my career, we have buried many people that have given their lives, and to have that perspective, I think, for other agencies that maybe haven't had that experience, and I hope they never do. Yeah. But God forbid they do have that experience, maybe it gives them a place to start to make sure that they do it properly.
Yeah. I would love to have command teams and anyone who might be a family liaison to listen to those episodes before the crisis. Mm-hmm. listen in preparation.
Before the emotion,
Yes. Yeah.
before the
you're
grief.
in the, sleepless nights and doing 20-hour days. And before that hits, listen to this so that it's not a matter of going in blind, but that you have heard of this. You've heard people talk about the ups and downs and the pros and cons and the struggles, and you've already familiarized yourself with that. And now when you experience it, you'll have just that much more advantage.
For sure.
That's what I want to see out of that. Now, that being said, I hope you give yourself some grace. There was a line of duty death in the region not too long ago, and I did not go to that funeral, and I just couldn't yet. Now, I intend to go to future, if there's others, especially here in the metro, but even regionally, if it's within 3-4 hours, I really intend to attend, because I think attending funerals is incredibly important. But I also had to have one that I just couldn't go to yet.
I've been there. I've been there. Yeah. It's, we've had some before that have been really close that I just haven't been able to get myself to go just because I couldn't, that emotional gut punch, the one thing that it's all difficult, but when you're at a funeral of a friend or coworker, and you hear that last call from the dispatcher on the radio, it's hard to find a dry eye, because that, at least for me, that is, that's like the toughest part of it. So, but no, I know it's tough, and I'm thankful that you're able to cover those topics. Another one I thought was also really important. You had, a really good guest come on from the St. Louis area and talked about, like critical incident debriefs. That's another piece where, bad things happen in this job. We're involved in shooting incidents, or people get hurt, or whatever it is, and we see a lot of awful things, and then take a pause, come together as a group, especially like you talked about in, when he was talking about getting people together, that core group that were there for it, and to walk through that incident in a way that's kind of puts it in perspective, so that you see the entire totality of the incident. It really helps you process that. And, I'm a firm believer in them. I've been through several in my career, and I've always gotten something good out of them. And, once again, talking about that and reminding people, hey, some agencies don't mandate that people attend, and they leave it up to the individual officer, deputy, trooper, whatever it is, to make that decision. Kind of like you guys reiterated in that episode, I would do the same. Even if your agency doesn't require you to go, if you're involved in some type of critical incident that they're doing a formal debrief for, I highly recommend you go and participate if you can, because the benefits of processing that are going to be, so important for you for your entire career.
Also, Jake, the international security specialist guy, the semi-anonymous specialist and all that kind of things, he just recently negotiated a return of a body of a missionary that had, the missionary had been killed overseas, and he had to negotiate getting that body back. He's worked with people who've been kidnapped just recently. He is going to help with the Olympics in Italy. He's doing all sorts of interesting stuff, and I've been talking to him. And I'm like, okay, when am I going to get you back on? Because any of that would be fascinating. We'll have him back as soon as I can get him to a stable internet connection. We are going to talk more about Copline. I'm not sponsored by Copline. I just firmly believe in them. And Ward Jenkins has been on the show many times. Ward Jenkins is now a person who might pick up the line on the other end.
Oh, cool.
He went through the training, and he's now someone who answers the calls on that hotline. Everybody, when you call Copline, everybody who answers is a former police officer.
Do you think Ward got the idea from listening to your episode on that Copline to want to participate in it, or do you think you already had knowledge of it?
I think when we went to ICPC together, I had a bunch of Copline material to hand out from my booth. And so it was kind of the Hey Chaplain and Copline booth.
Oh, okay.
And so he often manned the booth for me while I was somewhere else taking a class, and he handed out a lot of Copline stuff, and I think that might have influenced him as he sat there and pitched Copline to people.
Like, maybe I should participate.
You know what? I should get involved. Yes.
Nice. That's great.
Yep.
Speaking of the conference, you got to go to the conference and you recorded a bunch of episodes down there while you're there.
It was another little experiment I did, was recording on site and using not my studio equipment, but little handheld microphones and recording on a daily basis and turning it around.
Yeah, that was a quick turnaround.
Record and then that afternoon and then put it out that night. That was an interesting experiment. I wouldn't want to do that every week, but putting out a daily show was interesting and a lot of fun. I got a lot of great response from it. People were interested. It helped that they were all very short episodes.
Yeah, just get in, get out.
Yeah, yeah. And we weren't droning on and on for hours. And it was great to have a co-host every day with Ward, and it was fantastic. And I want to thank you. You helped me to get to go because it took a lot of extra funding to go for a week and to be at the conference and do all that kind of thing. And you helped with that. And then the people who were helping at Buy Me a Coffee, I had one individual who I believe wants to remain anonymous, but you know who you are, who probably paid 80 or 90% of the fee for me to have a booth at ICPC.
Wow.
And that person has been very generous. They've had a couple things. They seem to like to give to like a special project, and they've done that twice now, where they've paid the lion's share of something, of a big ticket item.
Yeah, that's big. That's huge.
And that's tremendously helpful. And so I really appreciate the people who've helped in different ways, whether it's with the logistics or with the finances or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it all has to come together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's great to have people supporting me.
No, it's good. I'm glad you got to go to that conference, and just talking to you and, for what you're talking about now, it sounds like you had some really good opportunities to, just like any conference, learn things, meet people, you get to set up your booth. Just think about how many people got to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. So much better than I thought it would be. It was applicable to my work at the church. It was applicable to the chaplaincy work that I was doing. I want to see police chaplains be more professionalized, whether they remain volunteer or not. I want them to be more professional. And this scratched that itch in so many good ways and made so many good contacts. In fact, I intend to go again next year.
Yeah.
And so I'm very, very happy with the International Conference of Police Chaplains and the work that they're doing.
Good. That's great to hear. I'm glad you got a lot of good out of it. If you go back to that conference next year, right, 2026, do you plan on doing recording daily again?
That is a fantastic question, because I probably would not record bagpipes again. That was hard to do. And some of the stuff I've done that just is maybe kind of behind the scenes, people wouldn't necessarily realize I was doing it. Some of that work was probably not worth it as far as like how much I put in, or how much it cost me maybe. But doing a daily show, if I travel again, I would consider it. It was hard, but it was hard in a good way, like exercising. And so it stretched me and frankly made going back to my normal
seem
recording.
Easy.
Yeah, it made the normal recording seem really easy.
Yeah, it's always good.
So maybe I would try it again.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was neat. I like the opportunity to kind of have some new, like a shorter episode every day was kind of fun. I know that's probably just not feasible to maintain. Like, I don't think we're going to get 365 episodes next year.
I'm years from retiring, and that probably wouldn't happen until then.
Yeah. No, but I liked that. I did like some of the new things that you tried out, and I know it's hard to pin you down on things, but anything in 2026 that you might want to try new that would even be something in your mind of something that you'd want to try out?
I was recently challenged to make this a video podcast, and I appreciate that challenge. I don't think I will do that anytime in the near future.
There's just a lot of things to consider with that.
It is significantly more expensive. It is to do well. You can do it badly for free, okay? But I don't want to
you want a polished, good product, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
And so I don't think I'm going to pursue that. That was, I was just recently, I was on a ride along with an officer, and he said, you should make it a video. And I published the audio on YouTube, but producing a video would almost require a team to do it at the level I want to do it at. And I don't pay me. And so how would I pay a team?
Right.
So I probably will not do that.
That does sound like a heavy lift.
And so they would be great to be producing shorts and put those on TikTok and Instagram and do YouTube video. And it'd be great to do that if I had infinite time and infinite resources. I can do an audio podcast at a very high level in my current life situation. And so that's the plan going forward.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I totally get it. All right. So looking at your eval here, we've got obviously some really positive things. We've got some really good projects you've worked on, some really good output. You've got some really good episodes that I think are going to benefit a lot of people this year.
Am I getting a letter grade, or is this a...
We do numerical.
Yeah. Okay.
We do numerical.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're solid 9. Solid 9 out of 10. And then the reason I don't want to...
9 out of 20. Okay.
9 out of 100. No, 9 out of 10. And the reason why 9 out of 10 I think this year is because I never want to give you the maximum score, because I want you to strive. I want you to continue to try and improve. And if I top you out, you're not going to have any motivation to do anything more with the show in the future. So 9 out of 10, outstanding job. I'm going to put a note on here that we want to retain you as a chaplain and your show. And I'm just really excited for what you've done this year. I think you've done a great job. I'm super proud of you. And I'm looking forward to the future of the show and what else you're going to bring us. Because like you said, we're coming up on 5 years now. So we're talking about potential increases of different benefits here. So want to make sure you're doing good. So we want to keep that up.
My podcast retirement can go from 0 and double to 0.
A 3.5% increase of 0. I like it. No, seriously, you've, I'm a huge fan of the show. It's always an honor to come back and be on it and talk about the wonderful things that you've done over the course of the year. And then, like I said, it's always a pleasure for me that I get a little sneak peek of what's going to come. And just to hear you say, yeah, the show's going to continue and I'm going to keep putting out this important content is a nice thing to hear, because I know you put a lot of work in this, and I know you invest a lot of your time. I know you're very busy with, obviously providing services and resources and being that pastor of your church, right? But also you have a family, you have friends, you have grandchildren, you have all of these things that are all very important. And for you to invest so much time and effort, not only into our police department, but the show, and then, our nation and the world as a whole, I just want to thank you for that. That's very important. And like I said, I'm just excited to hear that you're willing to keep it going, because I think you're doing a lot of good with the show right now.
Thank you. In broad strokes, I am always looking for the next lead, because I have to juggle so many leads at a time, and so many leads go cold where it is a good lead. It's a great story. It just, the person's not ready anytime in the next
just
several
doesn't work
months
out
to record, and they will someday, but not in the next immediate future. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I know somebody who has hard-earned wisdom to share, they are positive enough about it to encourage other police officers, put me in contact. Maybe it'll work out. I've had a few of those this year that turned around so quickly. You put me in contact with Todd Hixson, and boom, he was like, I'm ready to do it. Yep. Let's make it happen. Those things do work out in short order sometimes. I just don't want to disappoint anybody if they're like, hey, I put you in touch with my sheriff and he's ready to go, but it's been 6 months. That happens because I work so far out in advance.
Right.
And so I can't promise that I can take everybody, but I'm always looking. And if it's a good story with some good wisdom, then I'll at least look at it.
For sure. And I think you always like getting sort of perspectives from different parts of the world too.
Oh yeah.
If you've got, if you're a law enforcement officer or a chaplain in another country that he hasn't had on the show, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. Yeah. One thing I've learned about listening to your show is that there's so many facets of chaplaincy and law enforcement, and there's so many things that I never would have known about unless you had a guest on. Yeah. So if you're a listener out there, someone that has a perspective that hasn't been covered by the show,
that's something really unique.
Yeah.
Or
have them reach out, get them in touch, because that might be the next episode that
every year I say I'm going to have a police diver. And I have gone through, I think I'm up to 7 or 8 different divers that I have talked to. We've maybe scheduled an appointment or whatever, and it has never worked out.
Darn.
And so one of these years, there'll be a police diver.
I'm looking forward to it.
Rescue diver. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. That'll be cool. This show's been on for years now, and it's always a pleasure to get to come here and talk to you about the wonderful things you put out, but also like to kind of get a little sneak peek of what might be coming in the future.
Well, something that's not audio is I will be rebranding the cover art.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been working on that for several months. and in fact, when we stop recording, I'll show you the current prototype.
Look out.
But all of my stickers and magnets and all of that will change somewhat. It will be recognizable. It will not be a complete like rebrand. The name of the show will still be Hey Chaplain.
Okay.
But some of the artwork is going to change here in 2026. I hope to roll that out in time for the 5th anniversary of the show.
All right.
Which will be the end of May.
5th anniversary coming up. That's exciting. You know, one thing we always talk about too, and want to make sure everyone's aware of, what are some of the other ways that people can kind of interact with you or get information about the show, or maybe, send you a message? What are some of the other platforms people can find you?
Find the show notes. If you look, so the episode description, if you're looking on YouTube, it's very easy. The description's right below the video that's playing. Mm-hmm. But on a podcast app, a lot of times you have to hit a button or 2 or 3 to find the show description or the show notes or episode notes. And that's something I write for every single episode. And it's usually a description of what's in the show, some notes about like who did the music for that episode, what the episode number is, if it's not clear from the title, all that kind of thing. And in that episode description will be a link where you can support the show, and that'll take you to buy me a coffee. And you can, if you want to get $5 a month or something like that, you can do that to help support the show. Yeah.
And all that money goes to the show to make sure it's being produced.
That's paying for my microphone cables and the software I use and all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of overhead for sure.
Yeah. It adds up. Just hosting it. Having the hosting fees paid for helps me out so much, because I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars to run this show, and having a little bit of that recoup makes a big difference. And there's also links in there where you can email me. You can text the show, and so that's called fan mail, and it texts my web host, and then I get an alert, and I can't directly respond to it, but it's a great way to just like comment on the show. But you can email me too, or you can support me through Buy Me a Coffee or whatever you would like. There's lots of different ways to interact.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show this year, and I hope that you come back next year for more exciting and interesting episodes of the Hey Chaplain podcast.
On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
When I was a sergeant, I would say, these upper ranks can't bother you. Just do your job. I got you. The truth is they do affect you. And we're seeing that nationwide with law enforcement, where some of the decisions made at the top are having a very negative impact on entire agencies. I watched firsthand my agency near the end of my career literally be destroyed by a couple people at the top. Literally, like one of the best agencies in the country to just horrendous. And it only took about 12 to 18 months to do it. And so those upper ranks can really impact it for good or for bad. And what I found out when it comes to leadership, everything great that I experienced in my career was really leadership. And everything bad I experienced in my career was because of leadership.
The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you liked what you heard here, please share this episode with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening today. To our first responders out there, please stay warm and safe and get home to your families. And as always, let's pray for peace in our city.